being able to engage your natural inclination, your nature, which clearly from you from a very early age, right? And I think in many ways you're quite fortunate from the perspective of that your whatever it was around your context and history and past that brought that out in you, but that natural inclination towards entrepreneurship was clearly evident early on, and you were, I mean, to your great credit, you pursued it with real determination, like trying to find what that is, and then being able to engage in that in a dutiful way in the service of the world, in a dedication to your spiritual journey. I think that's a really powerful thing. It's an extremely motivating thing, and it's something which acts like a real guide for many people. So we were speaking about the education sector in particular. Like, so if we were taking kids in their GCSE years or their A-level years, and they were trying to find what is it that they have to contribute to the world? What is it that you felt as an entrepreneur? This is my thing, that I want to be an entrepreneur, and you caught that quite early. I find that many students, in key stage 4 and 5, so GCSE and A-level years, when they're having to make options that, at least at A-level, GCSE less so, but at A-levels that are sometimes going to determine the direction of their future studies and therefore career, potentially. I mean, nowadays it's a lot easier to change, or maybe people are just more used to it. Do you have any advice or any thoughts on how somebody who's not, where they don't have that burning desire already within them, and they're trying to find out what that might be for them, and they're trying to, whatever it is, choose A-levels or maybe experiment with things, or any thoughts on how you might encourage or advise a 16, 17-year-old?
Yeah, I think it's a really, really difficult thing to do. And I am, as you said, so grateful that I'm in a position where I'm doing, even though it's very, very difficult at times, doing something I genuinely enjoy doing. And that is, I feel very, very lucky to be in that position, because, as you said, it's not easy to find. So I think that came a lot easier to me. So very grateful for that. But even to some degree, I guess just touching on my own is, I've gone from property to recruitment to tech, right? So in theory, I think I understand the medium of what my service to the world is in terms of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And for me, that was just a very logical process. It was, how do you create, as one individual, how do you create disproportionate impact on the world? And that is, it's a business, right? It's an entity, because you have a group of people, and in your case, you're changing the lives of hundreds or thousands of students every day and month and year, because there's a team of people that support that mission, right? So that was, I guess, my thought process, but I don't know yet the specifics of what that looks like. I think in terms of someone that's maybe a bit younger, or 16 or 17, I think someone told me once about a Dharma test. Which I can't remember all of the points, but I think one of them was, I guess at least in a working sense or subject matter, is what doesn't feel like work?
Right.
What doesn't feel like there's a resistance, or what doesn't feel difficult to do? And often that inclination is already the first step towards, this might be something that you can look at, right? So I think what doesn't feel like work, and for me, work doesn't always feel like work for the most part. And I think I guess a subsection of that is, in what space or what area can you deal with knockbacks in the best way possible? So for example, someone in sport, for example, right? I played tennis when I was younger. When I lost, I was really disheartened. I thought, I can't do this. I'm terrible. This is pointless. And then when you get into business, the knockbacks I deal with are far, far greater now, but I can deal with them a lot better because I feel like I'm in my nature. So I think that disparity, I realized over time that actually, that's because I'm doing something.
And so just before, and did you have that response of, I can deal with this setback, even when you were 16, when that first venture? Did you feel that also then?
Probably not to the same extent. But definitely not to the same extent. But I think it was almost a repeated process that I realized that.
Yeah.
So in my head, resilience is a muscle, right? So the more you train it, the stronger it becomes and the better you get at dealing with these things.
Yeah.
And I thought the reason it's growing as a muscle is because I'm supposed to do this, if that makes sense. And I guess going back to your question, I think it is a case of experimentation.
Yeah.
And I think what we can do as a society is try and give, when you're 16 or 17, obviously the academia is really, really important because it sets them up for the rest of their lives, but how do we create a safe space where they feel like they can experiment?
Yeah.
Because from an opportunity cost perspective, at that point in their lives, before they go on to have a marriage, kids, financial obligations, the ability they have to experiment drops massively.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's an opportunity cost, right? You can't sacrifice your family, your livelihoods, etc. So over time, I think the flexibility becomes lessened. So how at this point in time can we give them the opportunity to experiment and try and find that? And I think there's no pressure to find that immediately at 16 or 17, right? But at least have some inclination whilst they're in a safe space of school and with people around them.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I've heard it kind of framed, particularly, paraphrasing from the Gita, is this idea that, what comes really naturally to you, in terms of, what are you really good at naturally? What's a natural inclination? And what do you really enjoy? And the nexus, essentially, of those two things can point potentially to kind of one of these prototypical areas of contribution to the world. So, for example, wealth creation being one of them, the nature of entrepreneurship, etc. And others could be differently. And I've been thinking a lot about how can we try and create something based on these principles that would be able to act as almost a tool, really, for 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds who are choosing subjects and degree choices to help guide that in a more structured way than it is right now, which is a little bit, I think, based on, I remember the career advice I got when I was in college, which started off with, what does your father do? And what does your mother do? And so it's not always, well suited for the student in front of us. Yeah, I think that's it's a really important thing for us, I think, to be able to incorporate within the system, the education system, because I think it's quite difficult, I think. And I think choices narrow very quickly in this country, like compared to, for example, in the US, where up until age 18, you're still studying a very wide spectrum of subjects. Whereas here you're studying 3, maybe 4. And even in university here, you're specializing very quickly, whereas opposed to like majors and minors in North America. So I think that's a challenge for us in terms of the education system.